ahead of us. So my name is Frederick Donk. I'm the director of the European Regional Bureau of the Internet Society, and I'm happy to welcome you here today for this evening conversation. I understand we're more than 85 delegates in this room. We are nearly matching Macarena Stadium, I believe. And we're very happy to have this conversation. You will see that we have a very tough agenda with extremely important, crucial issues to discuss. In a few minutes, I shall ask my colleagues, in particular, Kathy Brown, our president, to take the floor. Before I do that, I would like each of us to have a chance to introduce her or himself, but please very rapidly. It's a habit that we would like to keep so that everybody knows who is in the room. So I will start to my left with you, Narelle. If you can just introduce yourself, it's just in time, and then I will go this way, and then people in the background, please.
Narelle Clark, member of the ISOC Board of Trustees and president of the ISOC AU Chapter Australia.
Rudy Van Snick, ISOC Belgium, and also a colleague trustee with Narelle.
Maarten Botteman, chairman of the Public Interest Registry.
Mary Uduma, Nigerian Internet Registration Association, managers of .ng, and member of ISOC.
Siranush Vardanyan, ISOC Armenia Chapter Board Member.
Grigory Sagyan, ISOC Armenia Vice President, Board Member.
Leana Galstyan, ISOC Armenia Board Member.
Оксана Приходько, ISOC Ukraine Information Chapter Initiative Group.
Sergei Sharikov, ISOC Russia, Chapter Chair.
Hello, Gonala Astbrink, ISOC Australia Board Member.
Richard Ewell, ISOC Member, former Director of 6 UK, trying to promote IPv6 to the UK.
Hello everyone, Anupam Agrawal, Chair ISOC Calcutta, India.
Fuad Bajwa, member of the Islamabad ISOC chapter in Pakistan.
Alan Skis, ISOC Canada, British Columbia, Vancouver.
Siva Subramanian Muthuswamy, President ISOC India, Chennai.
Alian Mishal, Board Member, Bahrain ISOC.
Judith Hellestein, Council Member, Washington, D.C. It's equivalent to Board Member.
Bon appétit pour tous. Carlos Gutierrez, Costa Rica chapter. I'm the chair. Thank you.
Monique Epstein, board member, ISOC France.
Monique Chartrand, ISOC Québec.
Sophie, please.
Sophie Maddens, ISOC staff.
Raquel Gatto, ISOC staff.
Demi Gachko, Brazilian chapter.
Sintra Suknanan, chair of the Trinidad and Tobago chapter.
Good evening, London. Louis Hull, chair ISOC Quebec chapter.
Joan Kerr, forced volunteer for ISOC Canada.
You notice she's looking at me, right? ISOC Canada, Glenn McKnight, Joan's husband.
Suhaidi Hassan, Vice Chair ISOC Malaysia.
Jahangir Hussain, Vice Chair ISOC Bangladesh Dhaka Chapter.
Augie, with the United States Colorado chapter. I'm the chair, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you here in the next few days. Thank you.
Jordi Parraguirre, Chair, ISOC Catalonia.
Christopher Wilkinson, ISOC Wallonia.
John Laprise, Board Member, ISOC Qatar.
Yasuichi Kitamura from ISOC Japan.
Takaaki Higuchi, Vice Chair of ISOC JP.
Hi, good evening. I'm Tomohiro Fujisaki, ISOC Japan chapter.
Sam Lanfranco, ISOC Canada.
Hans-Peter Dittler, President of ISOC Chapter Germany and incoming trustee.
Marcus Kummer, ISOC staff.
Olaf Kolkman joining ISOC July 14th as the Chief Internet Technology Officer.
Olivier Crépin-Leblanc, Chair of the ISOC UK England chapter. That's your local chapter here in London.
Please, gentlemen, can someone seize a mic over there and continue, actually?
Just shout out.
Oh, yeah. Or shout out. Yeah, please.
Check. Hello, good evening. Thank you for inviting.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. This is Jean-Jacques Subrenat, member of the Belgium chapter and the French chapter, a member of the ALAC also.
Roberto Gaetano, Public Interest Registry Board.
Alan Levine, Chairman, ISOC South Africa.
Wolf Ludwig, non-delegated ISOC member, Switzerland.
Alejandro Pisanti, ISOC Mexico.
Maureen Hilliard, Board Chair, Pacific Islands Chapter of the Internet Society.
Roger Catalan Chapter.
Robert Castonguay, ISOC Quebec.
Aisha Hassan, ISOC staff.
Ellen Strickland, Internet New Zealand, and also Pacific ISOC.
Konstantinos Komaitis, ISOC staff.
Holly Raish, ISOC Australia.
Konstantin Kalazidis, Vice Chair of ISOC San Francisco Bay and Secretary of Interplanetary Network ISOC.
Murray McKercher from ISOC Canada and ISOC New York City, a member of those two organizations.
Alan Greenberg, ISOC member and former ISOC trustee.
Chester Sung, Chairman of ISOC Hong Kong.
Vittorio Bertola, Atlas Delegate from ISOC Italy.
Otunte Otuene, ISOC Nigeria.
Fatima Camaronero, ISOC Global Member.
Didier Cassolet, ISOC Congo.
Jonathan Askin, New York.
Zahra Mohammed, ISOC Somalia.
Naren Bihari, Executive Board Member, ISOC Trinidad and Tobago.
Avery Doria, ISOC New York Board Member and Policy Council Member for .gay.
Juan Carlos Zúñiga, ITF, ISOC Mexico and ISOC UK member.
Sylvia Rudnik, ISOC Poland Founding Member.
Ernesto Majo, LACNIC, ISOC member.
Good evening, Amitabh Singhal from India. I'm also Martin's colleague on the board of PIR. Thank you.
Joyce Donier, ISOC staff.
YJ Park, ISOC member, but also trying to rejuvenate ISOC Korea chapter.
Ralph Howison, Leadership and Education Programs, ISOC staff.
Greg Wood, ISOC staff.
Christian Laranaga. I founded the ISOC chapter locally many years ago and was previously a Vice P of ISOC globally as well.
Kerry Brown, Vice Chair, ISOC Canada chapter.
Karen Schofield-Leka, ISOC staff, Partnership Development.
Hi, Jason Hines from Barbados, member of ISOC New York chapter.
Tommi Karttaavi, ISOC Finland.
Jyri Suvilehto, the Secretary of ISOC Finland.
Roxana Radu, Vice Chair, ISOC Switzerland.
Mwendwa Kivuva, Secretary General, ISOC Kenya.
Amir Qayyum, Chair, ISOC Pakistan Islamabad chapter.
Izumi Okutani, ISOC Japan Chapter Program Committee and AC Co-Chair.
This time with the microphone, Imran Anwar. I am with ISOC New York on the board, and I'm the co-founder of the .pk CCTLD for Pakistan. Thank you.
Marit Palavirta, ISOC staff.
Hello, Tatiana Popova, ISOC Ukraine in Formation Initiative Group.
Eric Thompson, ISOC Belgium Wallonia.
Evan Leibovich, Canada chapter.
Mathieu Camus, ISOC France, for the record.
Nigani Gabal, Yabe, Tejnika. My name is Anthony Nigani, and I am the Executive Director for the Manitoba E-Association, and I'm an affiliate member of ISOC Quebec and ISOC Canada, and hopefully the future Indigenous ISOC Canada.
Ted Mooney, ISOC staff.
Thank you, Ted. It makes sense you close the loop. Raquel, can I ask you just to tell us, you have a WebEx today. Can I ask Raquel to tell us who is on the WebEx? Thank you.
Thanks, Frederick. So we have Julie McPhee from New York chapter, Nikolai Olivier, who is here also, Ravi Kamal, Richard, Sergey Miazov, sorry for the spell, Seth Johnson, Stuart McRobert, and Ted Schumann. We also have this screen, I think it's over there. They're sharing their thoughts.
Thank you, Raquel. Excellent. And just don't hesitate to tell me if someone needs the floor from the WebEx. With this in mind, I will have the difficult task to be your timekeeper today. Trust me, it will be fairly difficult. We have so many hot topics queuing on this agenda. So with no delay, I will ask our President, Kathy Brown, to take the floor. Thank you.
So I will take but 2 minutes to say hello. We have a very long agenda full of things that I know you all want to talk about. I just want to tell you how delighted I am to see you all, to see such a big room of people from all over the world here that is the Internet Society. So I thank you so much for being here and spending your evening with us. There's lots going on at ISOC. I hope you're reading all the things we're putting out, and I hope you're on Connect, and I hope you're keeping up with all the things we're doing. I will save them for talking with you in the hallways and get on to this agenda. I think there's some enormously important things that we want to discuss. So, Friedrich, why don't you take it away and promise we will talk afterwards, okay?
Okay.
Hi, it's Olivier Crépin-Blanc for the record, and it's absolutely incredible to see so many of you here. I think this has to be the largest congregation of people from ISOC chapters around the world, and I'm really touched by it. So I'll also save on the timing, and I really thank all of you to coming down to London. So welcome and have a great ISOC meeting.
Thank you, Olivier. That was just short, perfect. So let's start with the first item of this evening, IGF, and I'd like Marcus Kummer to just say a few words about that. Marcus, up to you.
Thank you, Frederick, and good evening to you all. It's a great pleasure to see so many people gathered around in this room. Yes, the IGF update, I think for those of you who, well, you were in the, followed the meeting, the high-level government meeting, there was a lot of talk about how to move forward this year on internet governance, and the IGF certainly featured high in many speeches of ministers and high-level people. And looking back, last year was a difficult year after WCIT, the Conference on World Communication Internet Regulations in Dubai. That was a very divisive conference, and then the IGF had actually set as its objective to build bridges. And then mid-year came the disclosures about mass surveillance, and all these issues could be addressed at the Bali meeting, and I think the IGF proved its worth as the place where the community gathers to discuss difficult issues. Now, moving into 2014, it's even busier. It's really accelerating the pace of discussions on internet governance. We will have the plenipotentiary meeting of the ITU ahead of us, where many governments may be tempted to try to impose a more intergovernmental top-down vision on how the internet should be run. But we had also, on a positive note, and there was much talk about the high-level government meeting, the Net Mundial in Sao Paulo in April, and that was what I like to call a celebration of the multi-stakeholder approach. It really reaffirmed the multi-stakeholder principles on internet governance, and at the same time, the Net Mundial gave also a mandate to the IGF to pick up some of the unfinished business. The single most controversial issue in Sao Paulo was the issue of net neutrality. The language we agreed on, and the only way actually to have agreed language was to pass on the discussion and say this is an issue that should be taken up by other fora, including the Internet Governance Forum. Now, in the preparatory process of the Istanbul meeting, which will take place in the first week of September, we will now decide on how to do that, but it looks good that the Istanbul meeting will address squarely the issue of net neutrality. The Internet Society also made a proposal early in the year, well ahead of Net Mundial, that we really should try and take a step further and move towards tangible outputs, and our proposal was to seek inspiration from the Internet Engineering Task Force and move towards rough consensus on policy issues. And we proposed taking best practices where we have well-established procedures and document these. And this is now under discussion. And there are issues such as spam or certs where we do have solutions to provide, but not everybody knows about these solutions. And the IGF will be able, hopefully, to provide some guidance to participants on how to deal with some of these issues. But my main focus this evening will actually be on our initiative to set up an IGF support structure. This idea goes back to the discussions we had in a working group on IGF improvements in the context of the Commission on Science and Technology for Development. The point was then made, and you may or may not know, but the IGF is not financed to the regular UN budget, so it has always been a struggle of getting the finances, getting the funding to keep the IGF going, and it has been funded and work on a shoestring, I mean really with just the minimum funds that were able to keep it going. And when we had this discussion in the framework of this working group, some, especially business representative, made the point that they thought it was too complicated to give money to the UN. And there was also the point made, there was a comparison with the first Obama campaign, who had then used social media to fund the campaign, where many people contributed $10, $50, $100, but the end result was actually as impressive then as those who use traditional ways of funding getting big corporate funding. And this, I think, is known as cluster funding. Just go for the small amounts. And we then thought, why don't we try and do that for the IGF, set up some kind of structure, preferably based in Switzerland. And that is what we now proposed, and the board approved in principle at its meeting in Buenos Aires in November last year to move ahead with this project, but they wanted to know the details first. We provided the details, and now we have the green light to move ahead to set up an Internet Governance Forum Support Association, which will be formed under Swiss law, which is extremely flexible and easy for setting up an association. And the aim is to attract additional funding with the overall objective to provide stable and sustainable funding for the IGF going forward. We think the IGF has an important function, but it needs to have a stable and solid financial basis. Now, the aim is not to compete or replace the trust fund we have already in the framework of the United Nations, but to provide a complementary structure for small amounts of money, but also for private companies, especially when they're based in Europe. It's a little bit easier to just pay a check or to give cash to this association. Our aim is to set it up in Istanbul, to have a Constituent General Assembly. And once we have the Constituent General Assembly and have the minutes of this assembly, then under Swiss law, the structure is legal and operational. And from there on, we hope to be able to provide funding to the IGF. But the aim is also to go beyond just funding to the UN Secretariat, but also to provide funding for all the various national and regional initiatives. And I know many of you are involved in these initiatives that could help to fund, to award fellowships, to fund speakers for all these regional meetings. And that, we think, is important, and we also will facilitate a dialogue among these regional meetings. And I would like to end with encouraging you all as chapters to get involved in these initiatives in your regions, existing initiatives, but also, why not, start your own national IGF initiative, have a multi-stakeholder dialogue on issues that are burning issues in your country. We have seen over the years there's no one-size-fits-all. Different issues are approached differently depending on the geographic location, and it greatly enriches the debate if you get the regional and national perspectives. I heard once someone saying that good internet governance begins at home, and really much of the issues are national issues depending on sound regulatory processes, and if you as chapters can get involved to help your governments get the right decisions, get the right policy, that would be a great help. And on a more practical note, as you know, the IGF pioneered the remote participation, the hubs, through hubs. And I would like to pay tribute to Raquel, who was then not ISOC, but he was with the Brazilians and with a coalition trying to promote remote participation. And we really thought that would be the way forward, to have these remote hubs. Net Mundial picked up on those, ICANN is picking up on those. And this is something I know some of you are already doing it, but it's relatively easy to do. Just tell the IGF Secretariat you would like to be a remote hub, gather with your chapter, with some friends, find local institutions. Usually a technical university is a natural place for hosting hubs, and it's like public viewing in football. It creates a local community. It's more fun to participate remotely when you're together with friends and colleagues, just instead of sitting in your own office or room and doing it on your own. When you can interact with colleagues and friends, it creates more of a community spirit, and this is also something you can then feed back to the global meeting. Now I think I have given enough of an overview as we're running short of time already, but of course I would be happy to answer any questions should there be any. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marcus. This is what I would suggest. Any question, please feel free. This is the right moment. Before you do that, remember this is being recorded on WebEx, so you will be able to retrieve it later. So let's open the mic. Does anybody among you have a specific question for Marcus? Please.
Hi, Marcus. It's Evan Leibovich, Canada chapter. We're actually actively looking to do an IGF in Canada in the spring, but we're a new chapter. We have very little experience in doing it. Do there exist any kind of resources or best practices or any kind of mentoring or anything like that that might exist within ISOC to be able to help us? Because, like I said, we're just starting. There's very few people that know the culture of the IGF, but we're very eager to start something. Thanks.
Well, I think without, maybe Kathy would like to answer, but I think this is very much also the intention of this association to help and to promote also the regional national initiative. So we definitely have not worked out the details, but and also I don't think there are more than 30 now going already, so you will not be able to expect much in terms of funding, but precisely to have coaching and mentoring I think would be a very reasonable and I think very
No, we're not
right.
looking for money.
Okay, no, but the mentoring, coaching, but also helping, if you have a good speaker who needs the funding, that would be one of the objectives of this association. It's sort of seed money in a way to get you going, and mentoring and coaching by all means I think makes much sense.
Marcus, could that be like an IGF cookbook? It's sort of a do-it-yourself manual. You download the toolkit and here we have the IGF BCP.
And let me suggest that we could start something on our Connect. And that is, some people have already done regional IGFs, and I think we can start to get some information in it so that we can assemble it. It's, we can help each other on this one.
I think it's a really useful idea to do this, and it deserves a lot of support. Are you looking for any specific feedback from ISOC chapters to help in the formation of this, or is this basically sort of in the hands of you in the ISOC global team at this point?
Well, we get it started and launched, but it would be a collaborative process, and any feedback and suggestions is helpful. I think already this discussion here is very helpful. And I think the idea of a cookbook, the idea of mentoring, yes, it will be very small to begin with, but let's work together and see what makes sense, and learning from each other I think is always a good way of moving forward.
Okay.
Christopher?
Thank you, Frederick. In response to Canada, the European Dialogue on Internet Governance has had several meetings, and they happen to be really rather well documented on their website, both in terms of agenda, procedures, and output. So one could refer to that as the first recipe in the cookbook. But my question to Marcus was about the evolution of the IGF, both in Net Mundial and in the submissions from the European Commission, among other sources. There has been pressure for IGF to become more operational and to have more concrete output, whereas in the past it was a fairly conscious decision on the part of some of the participants to for the results of IGF not to be over-committal. What is your assessment as to how far the next IGF can go in this direction of becoming more concrete in its outputs and recommendations?
Excellent question, and I think I could go on for hours on that. But I think the fact that for the first years of its existence there was a conscious decision not to move down that road has proved very helpful, because it allowed a free discussion. Nobody needed to be afraid what you said in the meeting, because you knew it would not be held against you the following day in a negotiating process. And that allowed participants also to gain confidence in the process. And I would venture the thesis that without the IGF, Net Mundial would not have been possible. The IGF prepared the terrain which allowed Net Mundial then to come to closure on certain issues. And we already tried last year to move forward, but again, it takes time. And also, there are issues and issues. I think it's clear that some issues, time is not ready to come to closure. I would consider net neutrality one of these issues. There are widely divergent views. There is not even a common understanding of what we're talking about. But it is important to have this discussion and then maybe move closer to a common understanding. Whereas other issues, we had a session on spam last year because we picked up one of the issues from Dubai where there was big controversy, and we actually were able to show there are solutions. So I think on spam, for instance, it should be relatively easy to come up with a documented output which gives help to policymakers. Okay, these solutions exist, let's implement them. So I think in the end, the result will be more of a hybrid result, that on some issues you may move towards kind of agreed output based on a rough consensus, whereas on other issues there are widely divergent opinions. There is merit in having widely divergent opinions, on airing these differences of opinion, and also documenting it. But yes, we have to recognize that we are not ready yet to come to closure on these issues, but we may be able to revisit them the following year, may also initiate work between the annual meetings where we actually try to move closer to the positions. But I don't think there'll be a one-size-fits-all, that we now say, okay, let's have agreed outputs on every issue we discuss. We have to look at these issues separately. But there was a...
Yeah, I take the two last questions. This lady and then you, Alex, please.
Thank you. My name is Mary Uduma from Nigeria. First, I want to is a word of testimony that our national IGF has been supported by the by ISOC in providing remote participation facility like the WebEx. But we are going to have a regional IGF, and I think what is uppermost in our mind will be if we can have somebody that is versed in the IANA transition to be a resource person for us during the IGF. I mean, African IGF is going to happen in Abuja, but it just closed by is in July 10 to 12. And the remote participation, we are also hoping that ISOC will be able to provide that for us. We are working with Kevin from Kenya for the DNS forum, but we're asking more than that because in our region we still have a lot of people that you need to support to be able to attend the IGF program. So the African IGF that will happen in July, we're expecting that ISOC will support us. And currently we're trying to do a webinar which is limiting us because of our language thing in the number of people that can participate at the webinar at the same time. We're being told that we can, not more than 22 people can be on. So we're looking at if it's possible for ISOC as well to support us in that training or webinar. We'll appreciate all that you do for us in the coming 2 weeks. That's when we'll have our African IGF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Marcus, in order to just speed up a bit the process, I will suggest that you would answer the 2 last questions in the same way. Alex, you had something to ask, and then Cynthia, and then I'm closing this.
Thank you. Can you hear me well there? Alejandro Pisanti. Thank you, Marcos. I think you have provided several insights that are important, and so I'll try to be very brief here. You mentioned, I mean, Net Mundial has already been mentioned, and I think one more importance of Net Mundial with relationship to the IGF has to be mentioned. You warned us, and many of us were aware of the risks of meetings that have to negotiate texts with a given deadline, and that this text can be binding to our, let's say, if not like a treaty, but it becomes binding, or it has such importance that it will be quoted and create a binding environment. The proof of the risks that come together with this hurried passing through of changes that's not well thought out, pressures from lobbying parties, the fights about ACOMA, and so forth. Actually, Net Mundial proved that these are real risks. You never saw the activity of Hollywood lawyers in the IGF that you saw in Net Mundial. Net Mundial was a highly managed, top-down managed process. It has horizontal participation, but the way it was effective was because it was highly managed. A lot of money was put in by a coalition of the willing, if you want to describe it that way. And the result, the manuscript, the draft, was around almost finished at least a month before the meeting. We saw people meeting, delegates from Brazil, for example, in Canada and other places already discussing this extensive draft. And it was actually many years in the making because it was an extract from things that had been discussed in the IGF and other fora. That said, I think that the next step is to refer to what Evan Leibovich was asking about. He asks if there's some precedent or recipe book or guidelines that can do some hand-holding if you want to hold a national IGF. I would say first think if, why, for what purpose and when you think that you're going to hold a national or regional IGF. There's, as Marcos has mentioned, the issues and the players have to be ripe. You may be creating a case of to explore the law of unintended consequences. If you jump to create a national IGF that has a very broad mandate, that doesn't get the right mix of stakeholders and so forth. I would mention that in Mexico, we are looking down that road, But the first thing that we have to done is not even create an organizing committee, just an initiative group, and not even call the event we already held a forum, but only dialogues on internet governance, in order to bring out the players, bring out the agendas, and begin teasing out the issues. So we are able to have very open discussions that won't even go down as a memory of the forum. And I would think that we have also to observe that the different parties that are not very happy with the approach that ISOC and ICANN and others take into this are very highly communicated through intergovernmental organizations, multilateral mechanisms, and so forth. And we would do very well in coordinating among ourselves to have not uniform points of view, but at least no surprises among us. It will be, it's not very happy if an ISOC chapter in one country comes up strongly against one view of network neutrality and another one in the neighboring country comes in favor. Doesn't work very well for us, at least if it's a surprise. And yeah, final point. There are many of us who have been involved in efforts within the IGF that would do well to coordinate, to be knowledgeable about. For example, Shiva Subramanian Muthusamy has been running the Dynamic Coalition for Core Values. And there are many others involved in these things that we should be supporting each other to get this work done better. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And the last one for this part, Sintra, please.
Thank you so much, Sintra Suknanan from the ISOC Trinidad and Tobago chapter again. And I just also want to mention that I am an ISOC NGL graduate as well as a former ISOC ambassador. I'd like to ask some specific questions of the NGL program. Why there's no ISOC ambassador program this year. If this is a reallocation, then where has that budget been reallocated to, as well as if it's a temporary or permanent reallocation? Thank you.
Thank you. Marcus, please.
Well, on the last question, it's not within my remit to answer, so I don't know whether Kathy would like or Tora. Well, allow me a few, while Toral goes to a microphone, a few more generic comments. Alejandro made fairly wide-ranging comments, and they are well taken. I mean, I'm fully aware of that. But when it comes to the value of national IGF-type meetings, I think the main value is that it brings the stakeholders together. And I do remember, I think I attended the first West African IGF, and there were the guys from the internet community who said, this is the first time the government actually talked to us. And the value of the brand is, it is linked to the United Nations. That gives comfort to governments. They think it's something they have to take seriously, and if the UN does it, bring the stakeholders together, then it cannot be a bad thing. So I think just the convening power of the brand, because of its link to the UN, makes it worthwhile having these meetings. And if you have a first attempt, it can be very modest, it can replicate some of the global agenda, but it doesn't need to. I mean, the local needs may be different, and there may be local issues which are more important to the local community. But Toral, you would like to comment on the ambassadors.
Thank you so much, Sintra, for your question. And just to say unequivocally, the Internet Society remains committed to the leadership, education, and capacity building efforts of which the Ambassadors Program is one piece. Just by a quick show of hands, could I see how many people have been involved in the Next Generation Leaders, Fellows to IETF, high hands, the different programs? And this is, you can see by the show of hands, this is one of the reasons that we remain committed to that, because of all of the work that you continue to do both at these types of meetings and at your regional and local meetings. And so this year is a bit of a transition year. We are continuing on a smaller scale, but as we seek to achieve the right balance of scaling our work through our Inforum online learning platform and with our experiential programs, we're just looking to seek that right balance. So I expect that you will continue to see the leadership and education initiatives, and it may look a little bit different in 2015.
Thank you, Toral. I'm afraid I will have to frustrate some of you. Siva, I have seen your hands, but we'll have to go on the next topic, and I would ask Martin to just... Where are you, Martin? Oh, yeah. Just, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, a pleasure to be here. I think many of you have been at the Atlas lunch already, where we told a little bit more about our NGO plans. I'm here to give a little update on where the public interest registry is today and where we're going. We all started with that registry about 12 years ago, and since then we've grown together, and we've grown together in supporting a domain .org that you all know, and that has had a tremendous reputation, a reputation that helped it to be stable, have a good name, and be used by a lot of good organizations in this world. Now, here 12 years later, we come to a new stage, and I think it's a remarkable stage where we go from just being a registry for a .org domain to a registry that also supports other domains, and in particular, still supporting that same community, those that are there with a cause. We found an opportunity in the new program for GTLDs with ICANN to create the .ngo registry as a new way forward. This .ngo registry will be only there for those that are NGOs, and other than with the .org, that means that that comes with a certain stance that might help NGOs in presenting themselves in this world, presenting themselves to donors, to other NGOs, when that's useful to them. And now I know many of you are also involved in NGOs, so I think it's important to realize that, and also how the internet can even help NGOs better to present themselves, be there on the internet than before. Obviously, we do this also with the full expectation to continue our support to ISOC at the level we've been doing for the last years, because that's the second point. The market is changing a lot. All of you who are deeper into the TLD space, in the DNS space, and see how the market is changing with the new TLDs, it's clear that it will not be as it was before. One thing, because there'll be many more names. The other reason is because we will also be able to now sell our own names as registrar, and registrars will be able to run their own registries. There are some limitations to that. I'm not going to expand on that right now. But for sure, also that is an aspect in a world that unequivocally will go deeper in embracing the internet. The internet will become even more important over the years to come. And it's already so important to many of us today. So with the NGO space, we aim at, in particular, those NGOs that are new, that are setting up in those countries that develop. But we also obviously support the other NGOs that are often set up in other countries to support other places around the world. Now, in addition to setting up NGO, we expect the registry to be able to run from the 1st of January public. We will also set up our own registrar. We will set up our own registrar, which will be aimed at supporting NGOs in finding their way towards the NGO space and the internet. So also that is something I want to bring under your attention. And maybe you have ideas of how to either move further on the NGO space or even on selling those, supporting the NGO community. And you're very welcome to work with us. We're very well aware that we're just offering a platform here, that we offer this platform with the best possible conditions as discussed with the NGO community, and it will not be up to us alone to make this a big success. So, hence the message there. So, any questions about that, you can always find the answers on, part of the answers on our website, www.bir.org. and obviously I'm walking around, and so are a couple of our board directors. There's actually 3 in the room now. Amitabh Singhal on the right, Roberto Gaetano, and Eric Heiser in orange. He didn't have a chance to change his clothes after the game. Netherlands, Chile. So with this, open to answer any questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Martin. Any question, please? So it's all clear. Indeed, you have seen all the responsibles here, so please don't hesitate. Just find them and ask any questions. Thank you, Martin, again. Next topic, I'm really glad to introduce a great chapter. They're doing a lot of great things, so I'm really happy that they're able to share that with you today. Will it be you, Diana? Okay, wonderful. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Frederick. Let me thank you for giving us the opportunity to represent to the community our experience of working with a large local community and with the Ministry of Transport and Communications of Armenia, and to share some ideas with all of you. In the agenda, it says engaging with government and policymakers. Well, the engagement story goes back to December 2012. We have a presentation, if we should, is it there? Yeah, okay. It goes back to December 2012 WCIT conference, where Armenia, along with other 54 countries, was against the transfer of some internet-related issues controlled to ITU. During the preparation of our position for this conference, taking into account that we were against this transfer of control, ISOC and the Ministry of Transport and Communications proposed an alternative solution for local internet governance. It was suggested to create a local permanent internet governance committee with stakeholders of government, private sector, NGOs, academia, and technical community. The ministry sent the proposal to all governmental bodies for feedback, got comments, worked on this, and then presented the proposal to the government for ratification. This was done in 2013, and currently we wait for the proposal to be approved by the government. I'm sorry, I want to check this. You can see from here. You need to go back, I think. Go back. Well, you can see from here, I'm sorry. No. No, I'm not. Next slide, please. Okay. No, go back, please. One more. Back. Yes, this is. Okay. So you can ask, yeah, it's great. Many countries have local IGF. There is nothing new. We're glad for you. Yes, but there's nothing new. We'll say yes, maybe, but on the other hand, the idea which is new is, at least for us, is the permanent function of this body. This will be not a platform for all, gathering only once a year, but a permanently functioning body with its principals, members, secretariat. The suggested members of this body are the Ministry of Transport and Communications, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the National Academy of Sciences, the Radio and TV Commission, the Internet Society, the Association of Mass Media, the Union of Employers, the Union of IT Enterprises, as well as the Ombudsman. Here you can see that members cover all stakeholders, which can be further expanded if necessary. The status of this body would be Interdepartment Commission. The head of this commission will be the Minister of Transport and Communications, and the Secretariat is to be the Internet Society, providing a full transparency. The proposed Internet governance principles are as follows. Providing people with Internet access. That is, to develop infrastructure to increase the level of computer literacy, to support competition, to open the market for new operators and service providers. The system of domain names, that is, to create favorable conditions for the population of Armenia and Armenian diaspora, individuals and legal entities from any country to register their domain names in AM zone. Support of DNSSEC distribution and IPv6, that is to encourage and motivate the acting operators and internet service providers to use DNSSEC and IPv6 protocols in their network and domain protocol in the Republic of Armenia. Then comes as a general principle, human rights protection in internet, involving the representative of Armenian Ombudsman Office in the National Permanent IGF body. Privacy protection and identification, in support the technologies allowing to maintain the protection of privacy, along with providing the opportunities of Internet users to be identified according to law requirements. Innovations, to support the implementation of innovations among ISPs and end users. Protection of intellectual property, support of information dissemination on the basis of open license. Establishment of local exchange centers of internet traffic. Traffic routing. Security, that is to ensure the security in the framework of Budapest Convention, national law, government and public cooperation, collaboration with CERT, involvement of the community in this process. The next principle is open standards, and very important, for me as a parent, child online protection, to protect children, avoiding the limitation for adults. Support the registration of a new Armenian IDN.hi, for which we applied to ICANN this year, and develop the Armenian content. And the last one we developed is network neutrality. I'd like to emphasize the principle of network neutrality. Our detailed vision of network neutrality is as follows. All computer ports and internet protocols are open. Any information source and destination with any content in internet is transparently accessible. And no filtering except for the following cases: law requirement or court decision, end user consent, ensuring the robustness and integrity of the operator's network with the mandatory end user notice, preventing the overloading of operator's network, all protocols necessarily considered as equal, and protecting users from virus or hacker activity, DDoS attacks, protecting against cybercrime in exceptional circumstances, apply traffic filtering. Well, this interdepartmental commission can be a focal point for all internet-related issues in the country. This is what and how we engage with the government of Armenia in regard of internet governance issues. There was a massive work done, and here I want to emphasize that it was mostly due to the great energy and efforts of our ISOC members put forward. Besides, it's due to the fact that two of our vice presidents, ISOC Armenia, have close relations with the Ministry of Transport and Communications. Grigory Saryan, who is sitting right to me, used to work there some years ago, and he knows how this institution works. And the other member, Gagi Grigoryan, is currently the head of the staff in the Ministry of Transport and Communications. As I told, this is the path we walk through, but above this, we are here to discuss some broader issues as well. As we all know, in March 14 this year, NTIA announced its intent to transition key internet domain name functions to the global multi-stakeholder community. Transition proposal must have broad community support and address the following 4 principles. Support and enhance the multi-stakeholder model. Maintain the security, stability, and resiliency of the Internet DNS. Meet the needs and expectations of the global customers and partners of the IANA services, and maintain the openness of the Internet. NTIA will not accept a proposal that replaces the NTIA role with a government-led or an intergovernmental organization solution. With this announcement, the whole world started to discuss it. It's the hottest discussion issue among all Internet-interested people. What is the main point of discussion? Whether it is the main point of discussion and the main concern, whether it is a real intention or not. Is it realistic to create or modify an existing international authoritative structure, or NTIA tries to identify the real candidates able to carry out the IANA stewardship? Well, we don't know. We'll see it in September 2015. Let me discuss with you the announced requirements for IANA function transition from the perspective of directly affected parties which lack the global multi-stakeholder structure. Let's start from ICANN. ICANN formally is a US corporation, though its global hubs and at-large structures work to assign a global structure image. Its at-large structures can be more than one within a country. And though it should be mentioned that a multi-stakeholderism is provided by GAC representation in ICANN. Another party interested and affected is the Internet Society. Formally, ISOC is a US registered organization. ISOC chapters have ambivalent status. Some of them are independent local NGOs, others are ISOC affiliated structures. Besides, ISOC may have more than one chapter in a country, which creates a country representation problem. ISOC chapter, being a US subsidiary, can be considered as a foreign agent in some countries. For example, in Russia, if an organization receives a grant or even a travel grant from abroad, it needs to be registered as a foreign agent, represent lots of documents and get under special supervision. And after all, there is no direct government involvement in ISOC as a part of multi-stakeholder model. The another party is ITU. ITU is an intergovernmental organization founded on a multilateral agreement basis on 1864. Each of 194 countries has one vote, and sector members have no direct influence on voting procedure. And besides, the UN itself is also an intergovernmental structure. Well, IGF is the closest to the multi-stakeholder model, but it has no clear organizational structure. It is not a permanent body and is managed by the UN. As we see, all these organizations and structures in some cases do not meet the NTIA requirement. Thus, the proposed solution may be either the restructuring of the existing organization or the creation of a new body. This issue is a hot topic discussion, and we also have lots of hours of discussion. And we consider that a model which is going to be implemented in our country, that is the multi-stakeholder permanent local IGF, can be used by other countries as well. The suggestion is to create such local body in all countries, and with the participation of them, eventually establish an association of independent local IGFs. Red Cross is a good example of such association. In this association, some developed countries may have a right of veto, we accept this, in order to preserve the control of decision-making process. And here, the UN Security Council is an example of such right. By the way, the Interdepartment Commission or an association, which we suggest is not the only way. Foundation is another version where a multi-stakeholder model can be implemented. This is our 2 cents. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jana. I mean, I'm really sorry that I had to put you under pressure. I know you had a more extended version, and you had already to cut it. So, first, I absolutely like what you're saying about network neutrality and the model you present. May I suggest that you share your slides on the chapter delegate list for everybody to benefit this?
Yes, indeed. If we can send it by email, if it's convenient for all our members, community, indeed, we'll do that.
That would be wonderful.
With pleasure.
It's really great. So I would like.
Thank you.
Please.
I have many questions to ask you about your last two slides. I wonder if we could take some time this week and we can sit together. It's a very specific kind of conversation, so I think we can take it offline. But I'd very much like to understand your thinking about the association issue. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you too, because it was a very important issue, and thanks, Kathy, for signaling it. With this in mind, I would like to very briefly open for any comment or questions. But again, I believe you start rolling the ball, and I would be very interested to see reaction on the chapter delegate list. So thank you again. Oksana, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. Oksana Prihodko, Ukraine, ISOC Ukraine chapter information. We have a chance to discuss this idea with our Armenian colleague for a year maybe, and we absolutely support this idea. And in Ukraine, we proposed the draft of memorandum of the principles of organization of such steering committee. We would like also to send them into the chapter list. In Ukraine, we just now start to organize our fifth IGF UA, but only now we are working on the principles and on the protocol of intentions. Tatiana Popova, who is sitting next to me, is also a member of the steering committee, and we would be happy to invite ISOC representatives from our horizontal levels and from vertical integration, and also, of course, IGF Secretariat on global level and regional. So it seems to me that it would be very great enhancing effort if we can coordinate all our efforts between national IGFs, except especially in our regions. For example, regarding ICANN regional strategy, we are in different divisions. Yes, but we have a lot of in common. And it's very easy for us to understand each other and maybe to adopt very good strategy, decisions and so on.
Thank you, Oksana. And Olivier and myself can certainly witness that the last IGF in Kiev was really very high level. And I'm looking forward to the next local IGF in Yerevan, by the way. With this in mind, I have two questions, please.
Thank you very much. Jordi Parrairre, ISOC CAT. First of all, congratulate you for what you achieved and what you've done. I will be very brief because I know we don't have too much time. Just two questions, very short. The amount of workload that represented for your chapter, how many hours, more or less? I understand that this is different, all chapters are different, all countries are different, but just to have an idea, an order of magnitude, how many hours people you invested, you put there to achieve that? One. The second question is, where are you now regarding that project?
Okay, let me ask you. So we were working permanently because it's necessary to collect a lot of information, but we have started at 2012, at 24 of June, when we have received the information about ITU plans, how to take over the control on the internet. And we work very closely with Sally Wentworth from Internet Society. She was excellent. She had prepared excellent analysis, so we worked together and create our position on WCIT. And at the same time, there was a question, if we don't agree with the ITU, so we have to propose somebody who will be the responsible person. In local For our country, we have decided that it is a local IGF. So we work at least 2 years. But, of course, not 24 hours per day. So, second point. Second point, where we are. So we have received last feedback from Prime Minister Office 10 days ago. And it is very interesting I think, very interesting to say that the objection was that Prime Minister Office afraid that such kind of commission can be some kind of internal control body. They don't want to have, it's good for us, they don't want to have any kind of control. So now, but we hope that during this 1 or 2 weeks we will have this order for creation of this commission.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, I will have to speed up a bit the process. So Alessandro, please, short.
Alejandro Pisanti, I think this is a very bad idea. I don't want to stay quiet because silence could be interpreted as consent. I will express it briefly. Your minister is right, and I find myself surprisingly in agreement. Creating the national body is already a dangerous idea unless it really grows organically from the community, like it did in CGI Brazil, which is a very unique example that works. The network of internet governance bodies, the global network of internet governance bodies, seems to be a far worse idea. Briefly said, it goes against the very loose coupling that characterizes the most successful internet governance models. It creates a single target. The way, if you are trying to do it to fight the possibility that the ITU try to take control of the internet, the way to go seems to be no control, loose control, coordination, not a different target for control.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's very important to have opinions, a position, and we I don't know what shall we do, but this is our decision, and I hope that we will see in future. Maybe it's not bad.
So the last question, Jean-Jacques Subrena.
Thank you very much. This is Jean-Jacques Subrena. I too would like to congratulate our Armenian colleagues on what they have achieved, but also the way of looking at the future. I just had a remark and a question about a thing you touched upon at the end, maybe the same questions as our CEO, which is you mentioned the transition of the stewardship of the IANA function, and in the course of that you touched upon possible structures, and you mentioned as one possible model the Red Cross. I'd just like to caution you on the fact that one of the sticking points, I think, from the US point of view, although I'm not a US citizen, is probably the notion of a treaty organization. So that's something maybe you would like to look into more carefully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I guess it doesn't open for any comment. Thank you again, the Armenian chapter, for the great work, and I hope we can continue discussing this. Before I pass on the floor to Narel, I'm impressed to just announce that we have more than 70 persons on WebEx, so thank you guys for being with us, coming from Nottingham, Shropshire, Algeria, Bangladesh, Cape Town, Canada, Haiti, Ireland, Uganda, Venezuela, and the US. So thanks again for joining. Narel, please.
I've decided to stand up because I think I will succumb to jet lag if I sit any longer. I have to get up and walk around. I know that I will end up unconscious, and I can see the quarter over here from my part of the world also fighting it off. So if I just keep a little bit of movement going, then maybe I can stay coherent, because I think it's kind of important at this stage of the game that at least I stay coherent for a little part of the time. Okay. We don't need to spend time on the first slide. Can we go to the next one, please? We all know that the NTIA is transitioning well, at least we hope that it will transition off. I think we all hope, don't we? I think we've agreed that we hope that it's going to move and we're going to move on to a different thing. I think we've seen the first few principles, and I hope everybody can see the slides here so that they can see the basic points that we've been given. The IANA transition, as has been said several times over in the last week, it is long overdue. March 2004, the NTIA said we're going to end it and complete the long planned transition of certain infrastructure. Yeah, you can read, can't you? Sorry, I apologise that it's all in English. So, we need to move to appointing some people to a committee. And this is set out on, the process has been set out by ICANN. We are at this stage reasonably happy with going along with the proposal from ICANN's process, at least if I can... There are a few voices of discomfort here because this has gone so quickly. Can I have the next slide, please? And there has been this large coordination group mooted with, what is it, 27 members? Are we up to 27? Do I hear more? Do I hear 28? Do I hear 32? Do I hear 22? The number we've got today is 27, and ISOC has been asked to nominate 2. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is the criteria that we, as the ISOC board, put together with some contribution from the broader community. You note that we did put together this list of criteria and we circulated it amongst both the chapter delegates and the advisory council. So in the short period of time that we had, we put that list of criteria out for comment. So if I can run through them very quickly. We need people to have a clear appreciation of the nature of multi-stakeholder participation and governance with a familiarity of consensus-based decision-making systems. I'm pretty sure that pretty well every single member of ISOC has got that down pat. Yes, sure, we've got a few different senses of it here and there, and some of that's cultural and some of that is experiential, some of that is from all sorts of different ideas. We need them to have demonstrated expertise in the technical procedures, practices and administration of the internet. And we've got to always keep in mind security, stability and resiliency of the internet, its protocols and operation. We're talking about a database, okay? A critical database, and it needs to work. So you need to have familiarity with the IANA operating model, don't you? On to the next one, a solid understanding of the not the next slide, I couldn't read that fast. Go back one. A solid understanding of the overarching governance and contractual principles. That is this sense that at the present moment, there's a contract in place, okay? And there needs to be some principles over the top of the way that the IANA function works, which have in the past worked under a contract with the US government. Okay, now jump to the next one. I'm not the only person who's tired, obviously. So we need the ability and these people need to have the ability and confidence of the Internet Society community to operate within the broader diplomatic environment. You know, there's a few bits and pieces. There are politics involved in this game. And we need our representatives to have our confidence. And this confidence needs to come from both our organisational members, our chapter members, our individual members, and other folk that have come close to our hearts over the years that ISOC has been in existence. And the next criteria, the willingness to devote time and energy to this process. I hate to say it, but the timetable's till 30th of September next year. Yes, I heard Fadi today. I'm sure others heard him too. Devote time and energy to this process. This thing is going to take a lot of time. And then I apologise, but I really felt it was important for us to put in another catch-all criteria at the end here, which was for what we missed along the way. We may need to figure out some other criteria in order to ensure that our representatives are effective. And I apologise that I needed to put in we needed to put in that catch-all criteria just in case we miss something. This thing has happened so quickly. Okay, next slide. You've got to have a process diagram. Here's a process diagram. We've had, I think it's 4 weeks to figure out how to select people, how to put that through our good old processes that we do actually have, the tried and true processes for selecting various representatives. PIR board members, we selected you this way. We've selected other people in this way as well. So we've run that through fairly quickly, and the Board of Trustees meets this week. It's any day now, isn't it? I've even read the papers. Okay, so next month, not the next slide. Okay, I get the wind up, I get the message. The coordination committee needs to kick off and get going. So in the timetable that they've got, which runs through till the 30th of September next year, we should have at least 3 official face-to-face Board of Trustee meetings, plus there should be a lot of other ISOC meetings. There will be chapters meetings around the world. There will be all sorts of other ISOC meetings that we will have. Throughout our normal processes, we need to use these to work these and make sure that our views are collected and put through. And if the timetable sticks on the 30th of September next year, there will be a process defined. So the next phase after that would be implementation, which of course you can see I put a question mark next to, but let's see, let's go with it, folks. And I've listed there a whole bunch of things that need to happen. Okay, next slide. So how about we all start a little bit of talk now along the lines of an initial sounding, and I will give the microphone back. We know that ISOC, the Internet Society, is a leader on internet policy and governance, technology and development on a global, regional and local basis. We have this unique position at the intersection of technology and policy. We've got some brilliant people here with so many skills, so much ability. It's just extraordinary. We speak so many languages. The people in this room are just outstanding. So, what will success look like for this IANA transition? What will it look like? What's the worst case scenario? What can happen? These are just some questions that we put together over the last, not very long ago. What are the priorities in the IANA function that we need to have primacy throughout this transition? You know, are there specific roles for stakeholders involved in the process, either in the committee or elsewhere, or what? You know, what are the drivers for success? Where are the traps? You know, we know that ISOC is a key stakeholder in the internet, and we know that reliability and security of the IANA function is just so important to us that, you know, we need to put a lot of time and effort into this, and we need our best brains and our best thoughts going into this. Okay, I'm going to hand over now for our initial sounding of ideas and questions, and I want to hear them. Is there going to be a scrum, a brawl, an orderly transition here? I'm handing it over. You're running the show, Freddie.
Please, I would like to open the floor for any comment or question. Seems to be all clear.
If we're all asleep, we can jump to the next slide. There's one over here.
I can say a few words if you want.
Yeah, please. Olivier? Olivier.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's Olivier Crepin for the transcript. So this obviously is a matter which I guess we all have at heart because we're all sitting here in this room and it's an ICANN meeting, and this IANA stewardship transition is something that is the big story here, and it's going to be the big story for the whole week. The discussions I've had, wearing no hats, wearing several hats, wearing one or the other hat, has been that there needs to be a very strong user component in whatever solution, whatever future there is going to be for the stewardship of the IANA function. I'm not saying it's unanimous. Some people have told me the exact opposite thing. But my personal view is that there needs to be a strong user component. The Internet is the Internet because of its end users. And so without accountability to end users, any function that IANA would perform, any IANA functions would have less of an accountability, I guess, than if it did. So yeah, this is really the point. I know that there are big questions about the number of people on that coordination group. We had earlier Teresa Swinehart that spoke to a few of us, and I think many of you were in the room at the time, at the previous meeting. And it seems to be that the coordination group is just going to be coordinating things, and most of the work is going to have to happen in the different communities that take part in that coordination group. So think of the people on the coordination group as liaisons, and with all of our community, and I should say all of our communities behind us, feeding, thinking, designing, and hopefully finding consensus.
Thank you, Olivier. Narelle, I would suggest we take some tour here before you put any comments or answer. I have got someone standing in front of the mic. I have Alexandro in the queue, and then Rudy. Please go.
My name is Fiona Songa from the ISOC Kenya chapter. I've been following the discussions we've been having on email and everything that we are trying to do to get involved in all these IANA function. And just in response to the presentation and to what has just been said right now, sorry, I'm a bit tired of forgetting names. I think ISOC is in a very strategic position to be able to influence the process. The reason being, in a lot of communities, especially like in the developing region where I come from, ISOC has projects that really touch the lives of the local community, the grassroots end users. And I think when you look at the ISOC website, you can see the number of programs that are run for communities and that chapters and individuals are doing for the larger stakeholder. If there was a group within all the entities that are involved in this discussion that would appropriately bring to the fore the views of the grassroots, my thinking is it would be ISOC through its chapters and through the existing structures. What we need to do, however, is to find a clear way of bringing those views forward. I've had a bit of challenge with the way we've had the discussions on the mailing list, because by the time you get to the end of the week, there's been so many different topics, you're sort of confused. And so you begin, human nature is we begin to do selective reading. Who has posted? Do I know who they are? What are they saying? That should not be the way. So we need to have a structured way of sharing and putting together all these views, probably going topic by topic and having a moderator who summarizes for us at the end of the week what are the different views. There may not be views that are in consensus, but they are our views. Just having a snapshot of that, then that helps us be able to generate more relevant discussion. Otherwise, you find one person writes a very long email that even when you print it's like 25 pages. And that becomes very difficult to comment on because there are so many other emails and some people are commenting on only a small bit of it. But if it's summarized and then shared, then we are able to, we know that we are commenting, giving a view on this general position that was shared and not sometimes what I think even boils down to grammatical issues on terminology. We can have a very structured discussion that can make a big impact for the grassroots stakeholders, especially in my part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you comment on this narrative, I had Alessandro in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you. Number one, I disagreed with ISOC's statement initial statement with respect to the transition. The reason is that I find that it favors what I call a supermarket approach to the IANA, in that it already is overseen by the IETF, IAB, by GTLD interests, by CCTLD interests, more or less separately. But the way it's stated has a thrust that could eventually lead to a serious splintering of the IANA function, which may be too far. Luckily now ISOC is in this committee, which is made almost only of clients, let's say, of the IANA function. We are actually basically the only two seats that have a stewardship view of the whole system, so it's a very high responsibility. The originality of what is being requested of the community is supreme. It's even higher than the originality of the creation of ICANN, because this will be a government-less thing that doesn't have that one government as a backstop, so the legal and conceptual basis has to be particularly well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I have got Rudy, please.
Well, I think that we should have a look at what would be the worst outcome and what is the best outcome. And we have to take some decisions on what is the direction we want to push, knowing what is the worst case and knowing what is the best case. Because that's where you start getting an alliance in your discussions. If you are able to discover what is the worst case and you see people starting up talking about that worst case and pushing it in that direction, you need to know how to act and react and push it back in the best direction. I think that's one of the difficulties in this topic, that at the end, I'm just wondering, I've been looking into this for a few weeks already, and my personal feeling is even that if soon there is no clear positioning, that the anti-IAEA or the US government would decide to say, well, look, you've tried, you've done well, but at the end we take it back. Is that a good outcome also for us? We have to avoid also that situation, because maybe that's not a good solution neither. So I think that we have to try to discover during the period that we have this committee also, that within ISOC and among all the chapters we need to have a discussion on what is the good direction for us, and that we can steer our two representatives in the stewardship committee in order to give them enough power to push it in the right direction. But again, that's my personal feeling first.
Thank you, Rudy. Malcolm?
Thank you, and I'd like to first of all agree with many of the wise comments that have been made already. In particular, certainly the last point about having a clear idea of what we wish to achieve and also what we wish to avoid. And also Fiona's point about bringing in the ideas from the entire community. When you select on our behalf to members for this committee, they will have to operate substantially themselves. They can't be just mere delegates to simply do what a mailing list tells them to do. But it will be such a huge thing in such an open and fluid environment that they will be enormously assisted by the ideas and suggestions that the community will have to offer. And I'm sure that the ISOC staff themselves will have a great role in supporting those committee members in filtering and organising the thoughts that come from the community so that they can feed into that process. The one personal contribution that I would make to the substantive comments here is that I don't actually like the term IANA transition. I don't believe we are looking at an IANA transition. The transition that we are looking at is about the role of the NTIA. IANA will continue. NTIA is stepping back. How do we respond to that change? What is it that NTIA does uniquely for this role? And how may that best be supported in the future? Now, many in the in our community say, actually NTIA doesn't intervene much, we just get on with it. And this is true in an operational sense. But a key aspect of this is that the NTIA has defined and placed this contract. And it's the choice of doing that that has a key governance function in how ICANN operates. In particular, the definition within which the parameters are set for what is an appropriate role for ICANN. Because the IANA function is on the critical path between the ICANN policy-making process and the implementation in the real world. And it is the choice to place that contract and the terms of it that act as the ultimate backstop and guarantor that ICANN is acting in the way that was envisaged, and allows there to be in ICANN to be a self-governing body within its own processes, with the opportunity for its own development through its bottom-up multi-stakeholder community, while at the same time preserving the opportunity that if there were some fundamental problem, there was some backstop alternative. If that is to go, as NTIA transition implies, we need to consider what are the fundamentals that we need to ensure that are preserved and what are the mechanisms for doing that. That is actually quite a big question that I think we will need to engage the whole community in considering that. It's not an easy question. It would be so simple to say, oh well, ultimately you can have something else that stands above and beyond. But then that just becomes an alternative that supersedes the ICANN board that you lobbied at instead. What has happened with the NTIA process in the past is that we have had a body that has been capable of being the ultimate backstop, while at the same time does not get its way on everything, because it was more important to it to allow ICANN to flourish through a multi-stakeholder process than to intervene to supersede its own preferences. That is what I think we should be ultimately aiming to replicate in some mechanism, through some mechanism, so that we ensure that ICANN continues to be something that we will support just as we have supported it as the appropriate model through these years. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And I see Narel is taking note. Thanks a lot. I got Evan here, please.
Thanks very much. I guess I'd like to sort of take the previous comments and sort of turn them around a little bit, prefacing this with this is definitely not the chapter's view and not even my own necessarily, but it's been expressed to me by a couple of people enough that it concerns me. And notwithstanding the necessity of having a good process to do the transition of the stewardship, there's a concern amongst people I've been talking to that a lot of this is essentially a diversion from the fact that we have a much larger ICANN, one that envelops far more than IANA, that is essentially not very accountable. That if you look at the current state of the process, before every ICANN meeting, Larry Strickland writes a mildly scolding letter, and then life continues as usual. That the stewardship that has happened so far, that some have blown into, American control of the ICANN or whatever, really has amounted to very little practical change on a year-to-year basis. And one of the things I would like to be able to do, at very least, is an educational thing. If it's necessary to explain why this issue is important, I think that job has to be done better. To explain why IANA, this tiny little part of what ICANN does, where's all the money? All money is in the GTLD program and this and that, whatever. And that's the part that's largely unaffected by this and much, much less transparent, much, much less accountable than this is. So even if this little part goes from something that is untransparent to a multi-stakeholder oversight over IANA, how much is this really going to change things in the real world? I mean, we're talking theoretical about and symbolically a lot, but in terms of how much is actually going to change in ICANN's function because of this changeover, I think is something that, at least as an educational exercise, needs to be addressed. Because I think there's a lot of people that I've heard at least from a lot of people that are saying, this is just something that's being utterly overblown to divert people from the fact that the rest of ICANN, where all the money is happening and where all the damage is happening, is still largely unaccountable. Thanks.
Thank you, Evan. Vittorio?
Thank you, Vittorio Bertola from ISOC Italy. Well, first of all, I wanted to second what Olivier was saying. I think that there should be a significant user component spread all over the world in whatever mechanism of accountability is considered for the future. And I would be very happy to see ISOC taking a firm stance on this, and so supporting the idea that global user participation is fundamental, and it's not just the close original circle of technical people and business people from the very early years of the internet that has to ensure and be the steward of the internet. But I'd say that in terms of success, I think that the objective, well, the basic objective is to keep the internet running as it is and to ensure that it's still a free way of communicating and making new things, and that everyone all over the world can just connect to the network and put their content, put their new technology and build something without having to ask for central authorizations. But that also implies that we have to remove any single point of failure. So the role of the NTIA basically was potentially a single point of failure, even if I agree that basically it's never been. So I think that whatever new mechanism gets put in place must be a distributed mechanism and not replacing one single power of oversight with the power of oversight by another single entity. But lastly, I wanted to agree also with Evan's concept. I think this issue is largely symbolic more than practical. And it's important because it is symbolic and it has to send a message that whatever other issue of control over the internet at a global level gets presented in the future has to be treated more or less in the same way. So this could be an example of the model that needs to be replicated for other more pressing issues. But I think that we must not make the mistake to remove the oversight of the NTIA, but create something which is not accountable. So to a certain extent, a certain degree of accountability helps in keeping people at bay, maybe in some cases. And so it's really important to ensure that we don't create something which then has no kind of real accountability whatsoever, and just propagates itself into a forever living bureaucracy that does what they think is right and gets money and takes meetings and goes around the world and maybe does not produce anything useful for the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Vittorio. I've got 3 more persons in the queue before I close. Christopher.
Thank you, Frederick. With reference to Evan's comment, that is clear, and it is becoming increasingly evident that the reform of the accountability and transparency of ICANN as a whole is becoming a precondition in several fora to successful outcome of the IANA, I still call it the IANA transition, even if I take the point that you could call it the NTIA transition. So that is clear. With reference to Alejandro's position, Narelle, I think it's important that ISOC presents itself in this affair not as just one other of the stakeholders. The primary strength of ICANN, of ISOC within the ICANN community and in this affair is that we hold much more than a stake. We do collectively represent a very wide spectrum of different stakeholders. And as Olivier has suggested, we are in a strong position to rebalance the natural consequence of setting up such a committee through the nature of the appointments that we make. And finally, Narelle, about trust. You mentioned trust, of course. The nominees, I say not the delegates, the nominees by ISOC need to have the trust of ISOC. But the real issue is that the coordinating committee as a whole will need to enjoy the trust of a much, much wider community, even going beyond the ICANN constituencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Olaf?
Yeah, now it works. Olaf Kolkman. I've heard a couple of things that I think are important, but I also heard a lot of focus around ICANN. The IANA function is not only an ICANN function. The ICANN function is around the root zone and the DNS parameters in there. But a large fraction of the work that IANA does is the maintenance of the IETF protocol parameters. Those are operationally important, but not on a real-life timescale, so to speak. The other thing that the IANA maintains is the table of IP addresses, the addresses that are allocated to the regional internet registries under policies developed by the regional registries themselves. There is some interaction between those pillars, so to speak, but roughly you could see these pillars as policy development bodies with their own oversight and then implementation at the IANA level. Let's recognize that most of the discussion that at least I've heard around this table is around the policy and the policy oversight that's being developed for the domain names, for the DNS part within ICANN. The policy with respect to the numbers, the IP addresses, and the policy with respect to the protocol parameters is developed by the IRRs and the IETF respectively. So let's keep that in the back of our head. Further, I would like to point out that on Thursday there will be a session led by the IETF chair and an active member of the Swedish chapter, Patrick Wallström, who is wearing his ESAC hat, I believe, in that session, on IANA. And I've had a peek in what the program will be. It's basically, giving the explanation of what IANA does, who the stakeholders are, what the moving parts are, and what we're talking about if we're talking about the transition of the stewardship away from the NTIA. And with that, I don't want to say much more.
Thank you, Olaf. And Jean-Jacques Soubrena, you will be our last speaker from the MAG.
Thank you, Frederick. I appreciate this. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Jean-Jacques Soubrena. I would like to rebound and take up some of the points which were already brilliantly made. I'm thinking notably of those made by Rudy and Christopher, which I will address now. The first question which comes to mind is a point made just now, that there is not only the ICANN scale or frame. That's absolutely right. So the question I put to myself is, in that case, how do you enhance the value of the ISOC contribution? Because we will not be the only ones. There will be multiple contributions. So a quick analysis, well, I've been thinking of this for weeks and months like everyone else, and I spent a few years in policy planning, and our partners in the United States were the State Department policy planning staff, for instance. So it's this. What is it that would enhance the contribution of ISOC, and therefore, what are the other guys doing? What are the other potential members of the coordinating group? What are they most likely to say or to defend or not to say? I think that's a first approach in response to Rudy's point about what would be our most, in our opinion, our most defective result and what would be our ideal result. That's a way of framing it in a slightly more compact way. So following on that reasoning, I would say that I see two or three interesting points. The first is points of convergence, for instance, with a fairly large part of the ICANN community as represented, for instance, by the ALAC and its chair. He mentioned the user perspective. I think this is something that ALAC in its own way, but ISOC in a much stronger way, I mean with much more means, is truly entitled to put forward in any argument. Because of the numbers of representations, or chapters as you call them, in the world, because of your ties both with the technical community and with user communities, because of the feedback that you can get from all this, this is unique. So in a way, what I'm aiming at is to push you, to push us towards a certain recognition of convergence between parts of ICANN, at least ALAC, of which I'm a member. And this is underlined also by Olivier when he underlined the fact that, for instance, this time in London, the big exercise for ALAC was Atlas 2. And it's all about the user perspective. So that's one point of convergence. Perhaps I would underline also some points of difference, which can be to the advantage of ISOC. We know, for instance, because of its structure and its purview, that the GAC will find it difficult to arrive at a very inventive, creative solution. Why? Simply because the base rule of the GAC is, of course, utter consensus. You don't have majority views and minority views. So the GAC chair can only present, or it's the GAC's representatives, if there are any there, can only present a sort of minimal position. So because of all these characteristics, I think it is particularly important that ISOC should choose the people who would bring the characteristics which you wish. I think that that is a true international experience, because it's not only about the internet, it's about internet governance, in other words, governance at a global level. So I think a knowledge of the expectations of the worldwide user community is very important, and perhaps you would like to input all this into your criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Jacques. And actually, you are the last, John, please.
Thank you, John LaPraise. I think I want to reframe this just a little bit, and I like the NTIA transition much better than the IANA transition, because at the end of the day, the NTIA is the gatekeeper for this process. If ICANN comes out and proposes something after going through the coordination committee that the NTIA does not like, and the Department of Commerce does not like, and the President does not like, it's not going anywhere. The NTIA will simply bounce it back to ICANN, and maybe that's a success and maybe that's a failure. So when we're thinking about what's actually successful, we need the very first threshold is something that's going to pass muster with the U.S. government. I mean, as much as we might hate saying that, that's the fundamental underlying truth. They have to agree to it. Now, beyond that, we can layer on accountability and all the other things that we want for the internet that we want. But at a really fundamental level, we have to be aware of what the U.S. government wants and what they're willing to accept in this transition. And if our plan does not meet that base level, it's not going anywhere. With all respect to the global users of the internet, the status quo will remain.
Thank you, Jen. Well, with this, I would like, before I give the floor to Cathy for the last words, thank you, Narel, by the way, for taking notes. I will have to close this session. I would like to share something with you. Olivier and I were really impressed by the level and number of attendance today. We've never seen this. So big thank you, and also for those who follow us remotely. That's very good and very robust sign of our capacity to engage all together. I would like to thank everybody who contribute to this meeting, and I would like to ask you, Cathy, to finish this conversation.
Thank you, Frederick. Narel, do you want to say anything more on what you just learned? Did something? No. I want to thank Narel. She actually put together, I think, quite a good presentation. I was very grateful to you. Just want to remind you that the deadline for applications to put in your nominations is Wednesday at noon. The trustees are meeting this week. They go into formal session on Friday and Saturday. I know Narelle serves as the chair of the nomination committee, and I know, I won't speak for you, but I know it is your intention to have an understanding of who has been nominated, to have that ready for discussion by the board. I'm assuming there'll be discussion and deliberation. I hope you can reach decision, but we'll see how that all goes. I don't think, okay? So that's the timeline on that. The last comment was an important one in my view, and it's something we've been talking about on staff, and I've talked to some of you about. There are criteria, stated criteria, that any plan must meet. Seems to me that in addition to the issues about the policy with IANA specifically, in addition to the issues of ICANN accountability generally, there is the meaning and definition of the criteria that the United States has put on the table. I think it behooves us as the Internet Society, for all of the reasons that you all just explained, which to me are the core of our strength, to do a little work. This is not the coordinating committee, okay? This is ISOC in our good thinking. What do these criteria really mean? What are the accepted definitions? What are the technical aspects of these criteria? And perhaps we can use some mechanism, some process for getting your good thinking around this. I know the staff is already starting to think about that. Okay, I just wanted to mention that, and thank you for raising that issue. There are 90 members in the room and 70 folks from around the world on the internet, and I want to thank you. It's pretty cool, and it makes me wish that we had more opportunities, frankly, than we have to actually sit together. This has been a very serious discussion about serious matters with very good thinking in the room. We, the staff, see ourselves as part of the Internet Society, and we all together are the society, and we are striving very hard, and you'll help us to make sure we're bringing all of our gifts to the table so that we can frankly do what we want to do, have an open, secure, worldwide, non-fragmented internet. And for that, I want to thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you in the next couple of days. Let's look for opportunities to have these kinds of discussions more often if we can, or at least at any opportunity that we can grab. So thank you, and good night, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.